open meeting of the Third Laguna Hills Mutual Board of Directors, a California nonprofit mutual benefit corporation. Today is Tuesday, April 16th, 2024, and it's 9:30 a.m. We are here in the boardroom as well as available for viewing on TV6, Zoom, and Granicus. I'd like to request that those in the room please silence their phones if they haven't already. And I'd like to call this meeting to order. I see that we have a quorum. We'll start today's meeting with our Pledge of Allegiance, led by Director Jim Cook. Jim?
If you'll follow along, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Jim. It's now time to approve our agenda for today. Can I get a motion to approve today's agenda? SK moves. Ira seconds. Thank you both. Any suggested changes to today's agenda? Okay. Seeing none, we'll consider our agenda approved by consent. We're now looking at agenda item 4 to approve the meeting minutes for 2 different meetings. Let's try to address these collectively. Can I get a motion to approve the meeting minutes for the 2 meetings outlined in our agenda package? Jim moves. David seconds. Thank you. Anybody have any suggested corrections or changes to the meeting minutes? Okay. Anybody have any objections to approving them as is then? Okay. Seeing none, we'll consider those approved by consent as well. Moving on to agenda item 5, report of the chair. Good morning, everyone. First of all, I'd like to introduce our newest third board member, David Vieneman. David was elected to the board during a special open meeting last Thursday to fill the vacancy left by Ralph Engdahl, who resigned from the third board at the end of February. Congratulations and welcome, David. Yeah. Okay. I'd now like to change subjects a little bit and talk about VMS. Even though VMS is a nonprofit company, at a high level, my expectation for VMS is that they operate like a for-profit company. In other words, I'm expecting VMS to operate as though, in order to stay in business, they would need to attract and keep external clients by delivering great service and responsiveness at a competitive cost. When I joined the third board 2.5 years ago, I thought that with my business and process improvement experience, I would be able to help figure out how to make improvements within VMS. I soon found out that this would not be nearly as easy as I hoped. While staff listened to my many ideas and suggestions, and they've even implemented a few, I learned that as a third board director, the mutuals are more responsible for what VMS is supposed to do versus how. To be fair, VMS does many things well. This is a large community made up of people with different backgrounds, cultures, experiences, and expectations, and many of those expectations are met. But as president of Third Mutual, I hear more than most about many things that VMS could improve on. So if the mutuals don't have a say in how VMS operates, who does? I would contend that it is the responsibility of the VMS board to provide oversight, direction, and assessment of the operations of VMS. The VMS board is made up of 9 directors, 3 representatives each from Third Board, United Board, and the GRF board. And why am I telling you all of this? Recently, 2 of the 3 VMS directors chosen by the third board have submitted their resignations for personal reasons, effective at the end of this month. As a result, we're looking for 2 new VMS directors to represent Third Mutual. From Friday, May 3rd through Wednesday, May 22nd, we'll be taking candidate submissions to fill those 2 VMS director positions. One term expires in December of this year, and the other expires in December of 2026. VMS is a business corporation, not an HOA mutual, and as a result, I believe that the VMS board of directors might have skills and traits that would be a little bit different from those of mutual board directors. During agenda item 11F today, this board will openly discuss the experiences and traits we think we should be looking for in our VMS directors. So once again, I'm requesting members to consider joining one of our boards. If you're out there and are interested in improving the services or reducing the cost to our community, and you have experience and skills to help drive service improvement, staff responsiveness, and efficiencies within VMS operations, I hope you'll submit an application to be considered as a new director for the VMS board. And that completes my remarks for today. As always, thanks for listening and thanks for your support. We're now going to move on to agenda item 6, which is our open forum. At this time, members may address the board of directors regarding items within the jurisdiction of this board of directors and not on the agenda. The board reserves the right to limit the total amount of time allotted for the open forum to 30 minutes. Each member is asked to speak for no more than 3 minutes. A member may speak only once during the forum, and speakers may not give their time to other people. Members not in the boardroom can also share their comments by joining this meeting via Zoom or by mailing your comments to meeting@vmsinc.org to have your meeting read during this open forum should time permit. Michaela, are there some requests that we have today?
Yes. The first speaker is Min Sese.
Mr. Laos, members of the board, good morning. My name is Min Sese, 3096 Via Serena North, Unit A. I know you're aware of this problem, but the electric grid on carport number 3049 trips almost daily. And I'll be honest, I have a golf cart and I have an electric cart. I park my electric cart on my assigned parking and charge there. And a neighbor generously agreed for me to park next to their golf cart, but that trip. So, long story short, I've been charging my golf cart at my unit. We couldn't charge there. So I don't know what the solution is. I know the cost is astronomical to change, but maybe change the fuse box. It's old, or can you reimburse us for the unused portion of the $155 that we paid to pay for electricity, because we're paying twice, paying at home, paying the GRF, the 155. I paid my $240 for my electric cart. I can live with that. I don't go out every day. But the electric cart is vital. And my neighbor who agreed to allow me to park next to them, they're here. It's their only means of transportation. They don't have a car. So something has to be done. Either, give us back our money, or the proportionate unused portion of our money, or do something. I don't know. I'm not an electrician. And the other item I wanted to ask for is, there's a deep pothole on Via Serena North intersection of Via Vista. It's been there for more than a month. Sometimes there's a yellow cone, indicating that there's a pothole to avoid. Sometimes there's not. Today there is, and it's right in the pothole. The cone shows only about this high. You can imagine how deep the pothole is. I've called this in twice. The last time was 2 weeks ago, and still it's there. It's dangerous. It can damage rims or tires, or cause an accident. I avoided. It's in the middle of the road, so I avoided by going to the other lane, the wrong side of the road, to avoid the pothole. If you can please.
Sir, can you give us the intersection again?
It's on Via Serena North, right at the intersection of Via Vista.
It's right by gate 8,
My neighbor.
right where you turn into our place by gate 8.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr.
Thank you.
Thank you. Before I call up the next speaker, we do have 2 speakers who requested to speak today, but we can't have any leasees speak. It would have to be owners only. speaking at the board meeting. So I just want to let you know I won't be able to call you up today. But the next speaker is Robert Stace.
Good morning, Board. Just a quick question. Would it be possible to produce maybe 10 packets for each meeting? I know you've stopped doing them to save money, but just packets so I can follow along with your meeting. I would appreciate it if you'd consider it. Just 10, no more than that. Just packets so I can pick up and follow your... It's very complicated, all the issues that you cover, and I like following each thing and then speaking with the building captain. Thank you for your consideration.
Next speaker is Greg Costines.
Good morning. I have a pending request to the board to replace my garage door, and I'm here to ask the board to consider the fact that this garage door was significantly impaired when I purchased the property back in 2015. There was some dents in the door. I'm not sure if that impacted it or not, but there seems to be some question as to who's to pay for this. I think that it would be appropriate for the board to consider replacing the garage door, not at my expense because I did not damage the door. I think the wear and tear on the door since I've been here for the past 8 years contributed to its current condition. And when I purchased the property, I did try to ask the seller to fix the garage door, and he flat refused. I was done with negotiating. I really wanted to live in Laguna Woods, and I just took the property as it is. The garage door worked, and it still does work, but it is impaired. I've had some people come out, take a look at it, and they said that it really should be replaced. Granted, they're in the business of replacing garage doors, but I tend to agree with them that it isn't really functioning properly. So please consider replacing my garage door. That's it.
Great, thank you.
And I have one emailed from us from Chris Collins. And they stated, I'm here with an update on the work of the Foundation of Laguna Woods Village on behalf of residents experiencing temporary financial crises. Don't let someone scam you. Avoid financial exploitation. We have all heard the horror stories of older people being scammed, a romantic interest who sends with money, a fake grandchild calling for help, a contractor who doesn't finish a job after being paid. As older adults age and prepare for the inevitable, they can be taken advantage of. As a result, it is increasingly important that we learn about the dangers of financial exploitation and steps we can take to protect ourselves. Many of us think we are turned into avoiding scams, but financial exploitation can take different forms. The next broadcast in the Foundation of Laguna Woods Village's televised series, entitled Planning for the Inevitable, will look at these issues, since older adults can be vulnerable to financial exploitation. Because of physical limitations, lack of transportation, and a more limited circle of people, older adults need to become more sophisticated about protecting themselves. Do you know what steps you can take to protect yourself? What are some common scams? How big is the problem? Where can we turn to for help if someone, for example, the person with the durable power of attorney, is stealing from us? What should we watch out for? These questions and related issues will be focus of the Foundation's next broadcast, which will be aired on Village Television beginning Saturday, April 6th at 12 noon and continue on Saturdays for the month of April. Tune in and hear Carrie Lloyd, a local financial advisor, discuss these issues. Carrie Lloyd has 30 years of experience in financial services and is currently a vice president and special needs consultant with Index Fund Advisors located in Irvine. If you want to view this broadcast on your own schedule, it is also available on the Foundation website, foundationoflagunawoodsvillage.org, under a special tab, Planning for the Inevitable. This website section includes the YouTube links for this broadcast and all of our earlier ones. If you have any questions about this topic or the upcoming broadcast, please contact the Foundation at 949-268-2246 or foundation@comline.com. For more information about the Foundation, please go to our website at foundation of lagunawoodsvillage.org. Please note that donations can always be made using PayPal or a credit card on the foundation website. And that is all for open forum.
Thank you. Anybody have any thoughts or responses
I have a question.
before I have them? And you are?
Apollonia Blitz. The question I have is, because I lease, I can't speak.
That is correct. This is a members' meeting, not necessarily residents, but I'm happy to try to find you after this meeting and chat a little bit with you about what you want to say. Thanks. Thank you.
I'd just like to get the address of the garage door.
Yes.
Mr. Costine's address, do you have that?
Yes, I'm just going to Paul.
3436P.
What?
3436, what was the letter?
P
P.
is
P
in
is
Paul.
Paul, all right, okay.
And the street?
The street, Mr. Costine's?
Pardon?
What street do you live on?
3436 Bahia Blanca West.
Bahia Blanca West, great, thanks. So we'll take a look,
Thank you. I
and see
appreciate
what's
what you can
going
do.
on, if nothing else, and get back to you, definitely do that.
Okay.
Mr. Stace, we'll look, there are other ways to get the, ahead of the meeting, you can get the agenda package online. We're trying to save paper, you mentioned, 10 copies. Sometimes 10 people don't show up, there's 5 copies. So we'll take a look and see what we should do about packages for the meeting. And Mr. Sese, we'll take a look at both of your issues as well. The electric, I'll have ask staff to kind of take a look and see what might be able to be done. We'll look into reimbursement as if that may be appropriate, and definitely look at the pothole as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for bringing them up. Yes?
Yeah, just wanted to say, Mark, regarding the, what we give out at the meeting, it's something. There's the agenda, the notice and agenda is a 3-pager this month. It's not a lot of paper, and it allows people to see the sequence of things we're going to be talking about. So we might consider just having a few copies of the agenda, the first 3 pages, and then you can know when to step out if something doesn't interest you. What I'm saying is, when the thing that interests you is coming up, and you can plan your day accordingly. So we'll look into it, as Mark says, but possibly the first 3 pages this month tells you what's going to happen here in a top-level sense. And then the detail, which is voluminous, believe me, you'd have to stick around and hear about that. But as a compromise, maybe we can look that way. Anyway, we're going to look at it for you. Thank you for bringing it up.
Thanks.
Mark?
Yes, SK.
Yeah, if you have a cell phone, you can scan the barcode there, then you can go through the sequence of that. So please use that barcode, then we can save some papers. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, save money for everybody. All right, we're now going to move on to agenda item 8, which is our CEO report. Siobhan, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you, President Laws, honorable members of the board. This morning, I want to start with 2 items that we're asking residents to help us with. The first is a Federal Communications FCC proposal that would adversely impact the village. The proposal would ban bulk billing arrangements in apartments, condominiums, housing cooperatives, and other multi-tenant buildings. Laguna Woods Village is one of the few HOAs that owns and maintains its own broadband network, and is a member of the National Content and Technology Cooperative, NCTC, which partners with the community to provide network programming at bulk pricing. Bulk pricing arrangements for broadband services, access in condominiums and HOAs mean lower costs, improved infrastructure, and faster internet access. In 2010, the FCC found that bulk billing arrangements predominantly benefit consumers. Banning bulk billing would nearly triple the cost of programming to the village, which is budgeted at more than $4.5 million in the current year. How can residents help? We ask that you please contact your representative to express support for bulk billing arrangements and concern for adverse impact that the proposal would have here on the village, especially for fixed income senior citizens. On the screen is the contact information for U.S. Congresswoman Young Kim and U.S. Senator Alex Padilla. This information was also in the Friday What's Up in the Village if you need to refer to that to get more information. On the next screen are contacts for other key stakeholders in this process, the FCC commissioners, the House Subcommittee on Communications and Technology, and the Senate Subcommittee on Communications, Media, and Broadband. We're also seeking resident input and questions concerning the asbestos abatement process here in the community. We have tried to have a town hall meeting with representatives from the Air Quality Management District, but have been unsuccessful. So as a workaround, Manor Alterations is collaborating with the city and the AQMD to clarify the process and provide members with the information necessary to expedite and complete alterations. We're asking that residents email their asbestos abatement process questions and feedback to the email address alterations@vmsinc.org by Monday, April 29th, and include asbestos in the subject line. The end result will be an easy-to-reference brochure-type publication for our residents and our contractors. As we've discussed previously, the Media and Communications Division, working with Village Television, has digitized docent tours for prospective residents. We are happy to announce the comprehensive community tour experience, a nearly 20-minute video that takes viewers to all destinations on the previous tours, and then some, is now available on the Village website. On the homepage, click Community Tour Experience for the video. This morning, I would also like to recognize the Employee Excellence Award winners. We had an award presentation yesterday to those employees nominated for this distinctive honor. The award highlights outstanding employees who demonstrate excellent customer service, achieve great results on projects, and regularly go above and beyond their regular job duties. These professionals who serve our residents exceed expectations and make positive impacts on our village community. I would like to share our winners for this 6-month period. First, in the CEO's office, sitting next to me is Paul Wynn, our Assistant Corporate Secretary. In financial services, Scott Kim, who is a stock clerk in our warehouse operation. In general services, Neva Farmbrow, bus driver. Preston Higgins, production coordinator. And Guadalupe Hinojosa, a broadband technician. Human resources recognized Dan Yost, risk manager. In landscaping services, Omar Cardiel, foreman of a ticket crew, and Francisco Uribe, equipment operator who runs our mulch operations. In maintenance and construction, Gavin Fogg, Manor Alterations supervisor, and Jolene Quinn, operations specialist, were recognized. In recreation and special events, Martin Ford, golf shop coordinator, and Ron Spencer, senior recreation leader, were recognized. Resident services recognized the concierge who sits out at the concierge desk right outside the boardroom, Rebecca Kunciaki, for her outstanding customer service, and security recognized Bliselda Wright, compliance supervisor, and Bridget Portuguese, security patrol officer. Please join me in thanking these employees for their outstanding contributions to our community.
Thanks, Dick. Okay, thank you. Anybody have any questions for Siobhan?
Just one comment.
Okay.
The people who don't use this address as their permanent address but have another location, they might want to also write their congressmen and senators about the bulk.
That is true. Thank you.
And is writing your congressman the only option? I notice there's no phone numbers. Is there? Do they
Yes,
not take calls?
we can provide phone call numbers. We can.
Okay.
Yeah. Any way to
Okay.
contact them is.
If you can give me
Appreciate
their
it.
phone numbers, I'll try to get that out
Okay.
to the folks. Reza?
Usually for this kind of thing, we prepare a kind of standard letter, and then everyone can access that and sign it and send it to the congressman. If we provide that, the members have really easy way to just get that letter, sign it, and send it, because that's how the bulk is done. there is a standard form.
And
If
we
we do that, that's going to help.
We provided that in last Friday's What's Up in the Village. There's a link residents can click on to get that standard language.
Okay, great.
Thank you for pointing that out.
Okay, good. Okay, excellent, thanks. Any other questions, comments? All right. Seeing none, we're going to move on to agenda item 9, which is our consent calendar. All matters listed under the consent calendar are recommended for action by committees and will be enacted by the board via a single motion. Today, per the consent calendar, the board is being asked to ratify the preliminary financials for the month of February 2024, approve 3 recommendations from the Finance Committee, 3 recommendations from the Landscape Committee, and 3 variance requests recommended by the Architectural Controls and Standards Committee, or ACSC. Can I get a motion to approve today's consent calendar? Jim moves, Ira seconds. Thank you. Any questions, comments from members? Any objections to approving the consent calendar as is? Okay, seeing none, we'll approve the consent calendar by consent. And move on to agenda item 10. Agenda item 10 is our unfinished business. Today we have 2 unfinished business items to discuss. First up is agenda item 10A, and that's for the board to entertain a motion to approve the revision to resale inspection fees. These updates were recommended by the ACSC, and last month this board voted to approve the revisions forward for a 28-day member review and comment period. Today we will be voting as to whether or not to accept these revised fees going forward. First of all, Chris, could you please read the resolution for us before we proceed?
Yes. Revised resale inspection fee. Whereas resale inspections are utilized to identify any damages and/or modifications to the property for which the selling party may be financially responsible, as well as identify any necessary repairs and/or replacements that may be the mutual's financial responsibility. And whereas a recent cost analysis revealed that a portion of the costs associated with the resale inspection process is not recovered from the requesting member, and an increase in the fee would serve to recover more of the administrative costs associated with the transactions. Now therefore be it resolved, April 16, 2024, the Board of Directors of this corporation hereby revises the resale inspection fees as follows. First inspection, $250. Re-inspection, if required, $50. Final inspection, if required, $90. Resolve further that the inspection fees will be calculated as the product of the estimated number of hours and the adopted bill rates, then rounded up to the nearest $10, and that it be automatically updated annually using the new labor rates. And resolve further that each charge will be billed separately, and resolve further that when a progress inspection is requested or when a request for final inspection fails, the member may be charged a reinspection fee. And resolve further, no fee will be charged for a final inspection if, after the first inspection, it is determined that there are no corrections for the member to complete prior to the close of escrow. And resolve further that the first inspection portion of the fees will be billed as a chargeable service to the seller upon completion of the first inspection, and the reinspection and final inspection portion of the fee will be collected through escrow upon closing. Resolve further, Resolution 03-07-119, adopted December 18, 2007, is hereby superseded and canceled. And resolve further, the future revisions to the resale inspection fee will be included with the annual assessment letter packet that the Finance Department issues every year in November under the Architectural Review Procedures section of the annual policy statement. And resolve further that the officers and agents of this corporation are hereby authorized on behalf of the corporation to carry out this resolution.
Thank you. That was a long one. All right. Can I get a motion to approve the revised inspection fees before we discuss them further? Jim moves. SK seconds. Thank you. As you'll notice, board members, the version read was slightly different from what was in the packet. You should have gotten a little update there with highlighted what was added. Any questions from board members regarding this? Yes.
What's in a word? Inspection. What does that mean? I can tell you from personal experience, I lived in Costa Mesa and I bought a home and got an inspection as part of the buyer-seller process. You know, they check things out. Is it working? Is it not? I had a situation where I had a frozen valve on a water heater, and when the line blew out, 2 months later, I found I couldn't shut the thing off at the water heater. Really problematical. You would think, well, the inspector should have caught that. That's what I thought. But yet, okay, it passed inspection. So my question is, with all this, I think we ought to be very clear on what an inspection by the village means as opposed to an inspection by a buyer-seller transaction. And I think they're different. And, you know, in the resident hearings, there's been a lot of misunderstanding. And I think anything we can do to clarify what an inspection means in this vein would do a lot to improving communication. Things happen, and an inspection, as we do it, is very focused, whereas a buyer-seller inspection is something else. And don't mix the two. And I just think that we ought to be somewhere along the line, we ought to clarify that so we don't get misunderstandings down the line. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Moon?
Thank you, Andy. I just closed the one escrow, and as you know, I don't know much about building. And this inspection, HOA, the Laguna Wood HOA inspection did a lot of things for me which I didn't expect. Okay, Laguna Wood Village has 2 inspections. One is HOA, does inspection. Another one is, it's not inspection, but whenever you want to do something to permit, one is Laguna Wood Village, another one city. So there is a certain portion of inside the building. They changed it without permit. And I would never know, but that inspection pointed that out. So they cleared all that. So I think inspection does protect the buyer. And I really appreciate that their input. Thank you.
Thank you, Moon. Okay. Reza?
I think I'm going to echo the concern here. It's going to be about $390 to pay for the inspection. What kind of security that gives to the buyer and seller, and what kind of liability that puts on the third mutual? Because inspection has meaning. And because it comes probably with liability, we just want to make sure that the line is understood, that where the liability lies if the inspection is incorrect or incomplete, and they pay $390 for it. So is there any definition of whether the liability lies? Later on somebody complain, or what's the protection for the HOA? Do we have those? I'm just asking the question.
I don't know. I'm not aware. Are you, Jim, as chair of the ACSC?
We have certain things that we can check, and we do run that's part of the time frame of what's being done here, is they go back into the records and see all the approved repairs, replacement, alterations, but we can't see the non-approved ones. So we're in the process of making it even more intricate to where if we spot something that hasn't been permitted or gotten an MC, but the buyer and the seller have to protect themselves. So they need to request. The problem is that the seller can request all this information from records, but the buyer can't request it until after he's an owner. So what they can do is they can go to the city and look and see what permits were pulled. And that's what the realtor should be doing, if it's a good realtor, taking care of both her buyer and her seller. Just as an example, with the gentleman that got up about his garage door, the first thing we'll have to check with that is see if whether or not the person that sold him the property or someone prior to that seller did the garage door as an alteration. Because if it was done as an alteration, it becomes the owner's responsibility, even from the past owners doing the new garage door as it was. But if it's a HOA garage door, then that's a different situation. And I'm just using as an example that that's the kind of thing that we have to look for, but we can't always find everything. And so we do have a disclaimer in that even if we didn't find it, it's still the responsibility of the new owner because they inherit the problems that were created by the previous owners.
Yeah, that clarification is needed for people to understand where the liability lies, because, HOA cannot accept all kind of liabilities if the record is not there or there is a problem. So I think if everyone understands that, the buyer and seller are going to do better due diligence at their levels before it comes to the HOA issue. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, in my case, there's about 3-4 items the seller never passed the inspection. But somehow, HOA asked for penalty, so the seller paid the penalty to HOA, and then they get away with it. So I'm getting those 3 or 4 items which did not get passed. So my question was, I'm inheriting those items was not permitted start with. So what my responsibility that permit when I sell and I'm going through same rigmarole again, or when they pay the penalty, that is granted as a permission?
Well, I'll have to look into that. I don't know the answer. I don't know. Yeah, it sounds like a hopefully unique case, but we'll find out. Thanks. Okay. Any other comments? Any comments from members?
Yes, we have a few, and then one emailed in as well. The first one's for Stuart Hack.
Good morning. My concern is these non-permitted changes made to the units. And the question is whose responsibility that is. It seems to me we have an issue here of at what point are these grandfathered because Third Mutual has not discovered them. There's got to be a point where the new buyer takes on the unit and is not responsible for non-permitted changes to the unit that were not picked up by an inspection. And I don't mean this in terms of liability. I mean, it's when does the statute of limitations run here on a non-permitted change to the unit? And when this was originally discussed, this was a large issue. And so I originally signed up because I wanted to discuss this, that I think this is the point in time where the inspection responsibility should be carried out by Third Mutual. If you don't pick it up here, it's over. It is grandfathered. Otherwise, why are you there inspecting? If you don't find it and you don't disclose it to the buyer and you don't get it resolved at that point, why are you there inspecting?
Thank you.
Next speaker is Greg Costines.
Yeah, just a quick note for the board to keep in mind that in my particular case, when people came out to take a look at the garage door, it seems that one of them jumped at the conclusion that this was a replacement garage door because they saw a sticker, Besser Garage Door, and I called to his attention that this was a company that came out and took a look at my garage door. I hadn't replaced it. As far as I knew, it was the original, excuse me, the original garage door that was there. So because there was a label on it, that was just somebody visiting and advertising. Just a quick note.
Okay, yep, we'll look at the files. All right.
Thank you. And then we had one person email it's from Teresa Kennedy, and they said, I am writing to the board to request you disapprove the proposed resolution to increase the fee for resale inspection under item 12 today for consideration. Thank you.
Okay, that's it. All right. Okay. Reza, do you have something you want to say?
Yeah, I think when we were discussing this issue, I remember in the Architect Control, we mentioned that probably one thing that need to be done, that at the real estate level, when the transaction taking place, a section need to be added for the seller to inform the buyer if any unauthorized alteration is done to the unit, and they sign both sides of it. That means the liability transfer to the seller, and if the buyer discover unauthorized where the seller said none was done, they can say, I don't know. That open up the discussion between seller and buyer, or if they say none, then the liability always lives between the buyers and seller rather than the HOA. I think if we push that into the real estate agreement between the buyers and seller, I think we can get ourselves out of this, If, for example, the garage door, the seller said, I didn't, it's not alteration at all, and then now we find out it's alteration, that's one issue. If it's, it says it was alteration, that, it's done deal. So I think if we push that to that level and we ask the real estate to add that to their, I think Jim also agrees with that, that might help us to, kind of elevate that issue a little bit.
Okay. Okay. Good discussion about what is an inspection, who's responsible for it, all that kind of thing. I know, as Jim mentioned, he and the ACSC team are still looking at inspections. What we're trying to vote on today is whether we should recoup the money that the mutual is spending because we're now subsidizing resale inspections so that versus having the person that is selling the manor pay for it. So that's really what we're trying to talk about. And that's what this specific agenda item is. So again, I will work with Jim as the chair of the ACSC to try to make sure that we're clear about roles and responsibilities, get Mr. Hack's comments in there about grandfathering and at what point in time, get Moon's situation in there as far as it sounds, from what I thought I understood him saying, some unauthorized alterations were somewhat approved somehow, but maybe not in the correct fashion. So we'll talk through all of that and work that through the ACSC. But in the meantime, we want to vote on whether or not, and again, you can vote no if you want to, whether or not to approve these fees so that the seller is paying their fair share for what we're currently doing. That's the idea. Moon?
I think Reza's point is really clear. So we're going to have the liability to the seller. That is a great idea to me, or to my mind, but once in a while you have problem is if the deceased resident and then the children took over, they never lived there, so they don't know what is going on. But I think at least the seller needed to be liable, so HOA, through the mutual, can get away from liability. And then the third point, and grandfathered, we just cannot So I didn't know anything about it, but that doesn't mean they can be grandfathered. What they did wrong is wrong. Somebody have to be responsible, needed to be corrected. And then in my case, they paid to HOA, Third Mutual, and they get away with it. I'm inheriting all those problems right now. And so those needed to be very clarified, and maybe seller have to be responsible. They cannot just get away, pay a few dollars to the HOA, and then they are gone.
Thank you. All right. Anything else? All right. I guess it's now then time for us to vote. We've gone through all the comments. Again, we're voting as to whether or not to approve these revised resale inspection fees and start assessing them going forward. We're going to do something online, perhaps? Potential some technical difficulties. We'll see. There's nothing here for us today, but I'm happy to raise our hand and vote that way. Okay. While they're figuring it out, all in favor of these new fees, having them go forward, please raise your hand. Okay, all right. So everybody here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 9 yeses. There's no one on Zoom, correct? Okay. Okay. All right. So 9, 4, 0 against, 0 abstentions. Thank you, board. Appreciate that. And thank you for the discussion. Our second and last order of unfinished business is agenda item 10B, and it is for the board to entertain a motion to eliminate standard 8 for personal lifts and elevators. These updates were also recommended by the ACSC, and last month we also voted to approve this elimination and place it forward for 28-day member review and comment. The intent would be, we have a standard currently, it's a bit out of date. Laws change all the time, so if we kept the standard, we'd have to keep updating it. The intent of eliminating it is if the situation should arise that somebody wants a personal porch lift or elevator, that we would take it as it comes in and address it kind of a one-on as requested versus having a standard in place. So that's the intent. So Chris, can you please read the resolution for us?
Yes, elimination of standard 8, porch lifts, elevators. Whereas Architectural Control and Standards Committee recognizes the need to review standards as necessary, and whereas the Architectural Control and Standards Committee recognize the need to rescind standard 8, porch lifts, elevators. Now, therefore, be it resolved April 16, 2024, the Board of Directors of this corporation hereby rescinds standard 8, porch lifts, elevators, and resolve further Resolution M3-96-25, adopted March 12, 1996, is hereby superseded and canceled, and resolve further that the officers and agents of this corporation are hereby authorized on behalf of the corporation to carry out this resolution.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Can I get a motion to approve the elimination of the standard before I discuss it further? So Jim moves, Moon seconds. Thank you. Any questions, comments on this? It's fairly, hopefully, straightforward. Any member comments on this? All right.
Yes, one member comment from Greg Custines.
I just want a clarification on my understanding what I heard. What I heard is that a homeowner, a condo owner, should never replace an item that HOA is responsible for, because if he or she does, then all future owners of that condominium will be responsible for that particular item, even if the replacement of the item is totally in conformance with what the HOA approves. So, for example, if there's something wrong with a door and the HOA is responsible for the exterior of the condo because it is a door, and the condo owner makes the mistake of replacing the door himself instead of letting the HOA do it, then all future owners of that condominium are responsible for the replacement of that door if anything happens to it. Is my understanding correct?
Yes.
that sounds correct, yes. Yep. Normally, the replacements are to improve it versus it's broken, but yes, essentially, that's right.
Okay. So I just want to make sure I never would replace anything that the HOA is responsible for because it gets everybody else on the hook for that particular item.
Thank you, that's right.
Yeah.
Yes,
I think the Director Carini brought up that responsibility or to let the seller, the volunteer, itemized all those items which, didn't get any permission. So that responsibility does go to seller. But problem is, once in a while, you don't have a seller. You have a seller who never lived there, and they don't know anything about that building. Like this is the father, mother passed away. They just inherit the building. They don't know anything about. But except that, the seller have to be responsible, as Ray just point. And I'm all for it. But we have not made any resolution, so we may go that direction. But I do agree with you. Seller, who is very innocent, inherited those responsibility, and then following seller, keep on taking their responsibility is such an unfair deal.
Right. I understand.
Yes, and so I'm going to actually, we're now talking about something that's not on this agenda item. So, Mr. Costines, hopefully we answered your question for you. I'll let you have a seat, and we'll continue on with agenda item 10B, which is for elimination of standard 8 for personal porch lifts and elevators. Any further comments on that? Okay. We're going to continue to vote by hand? Okay.
Vote by hand?
Yeah, vote by hand. So it's now time to vote for 10B. We're going to vote to approve the elimination of standard 8 for personal porch lifts and elevators. All in favor of approving that elimination of that standard, please raise your hand. Okay, all right. And Reza, you can do a little better than that. Come on. Come on. Get that shoulder in there. There you go. Thank you. Okay. So Andy had stepped out, so we're 8 yeses, 0 noes, and 0 abstentions. So thank you. All right. Thank you, Board. Moving on to agenda.
Andy's not.
Yeah, right. Andy's not here. Yeah, okay. So
Put it up on the board.
Okay. Yeah, so it's just 8.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. I didn't even look at that. We're now moving to agenda item 11, which is for our new business items. Agenda item 11A is for the board to entertain a motion to approve the revision for standard 37 for patio and balcony covers and awnings. These updates were recommended by the ACSC, and today we will be voting as to whether or not to submit this updated standard forward for 28-day member review and comment. Does anyone from staff, Bart, have any opening comments for us regarding this? Oh, wait, we got Alan today.
Good morning, President Laws and directors. Let me just give you, by the way, I'm sorry.
State your name and title, please.
Alan Grimshaw, Manor Alterations. Let me just give you a couple of the highlights, and I'm certainly available to answer questions if you have them. We went through and tried to clarify under definitions. We added specific definitions for awnings, section 2.3, and also 2.4, which is a covering. The main difference being that an awning is primarily attached to the building and extends out beyond the building. A cover is attached to the building but is supported on the opposite end by 2 posts, clarifying that. We also went through, under applications, section 3.2. We've had ongoing issues with drainage, and in the past, so we're wanting to clarify that and say that you can't impede the existing drainage or guttering systems when you add an awning. Moving on, We've also clarified that the member is responsible for maintaining the awning in good condition and put verbiage in there to do so, replacing worn components as necessary. We're also dealing with in section 3.8, because in our prior to paint program, due to state regulations, we are going through balconies and having to assess and do repairs on a structural basis. So item 3.8 simply clarifies the fact that if for any reason the mutual needs to get into that space and has the awning or cover needs to be removed, the member is responsible for that. So it's clarifying that. We are allowing, if under the covers in the last section here, 4.1, if the member, if they choose to purchase a covering that has a guttering downspout system incorporated into that, we're allowing that, but we're also stipulating that that drainage of that covering must work with the existing system. We don't want them water draining onto a patio out of a balcony, for example, and running over somebody's space below. That's really the highlights of the changes and updates, and I'm available to answer questions.
Okay. Go ahead, Moon.
Okay. Awning, when you have a rain, they still have a the awning stand out there, and then the water drained out instead of going to whatever we intended to. So that may create a flooding that area instead of going underground, which we intended to through spout. And is there any provision you can consider that instance so the owner can retract during the raining or something, so the drainage not going, the water doesn't flood that area? That's one thing. Second one is this resolution also you're talking about the enclosure, patio enclosure?
No, that's a separate item.
That I wasn't sure. Okay.
Before we take more questions or comments, can I get a motion to approve this updated policy, and then we'll discuss it further? Jim moves, Ira seconds. Thanks. Okay. Any other questions? So I had a couple. So you mentioned, Alan, that you don't want to impact the existing gutter system, I think you mentioned. What if that existing gutter system is an alteration that the member put on some gutters so that when he walked out of his sliding glass door, he wouldn't get hit with some water dripping down, and now he wants to take his own gutter out and put up an awning? Is that okay?
If it impacts the existing gutter system, whether it's the members or the mutuals, we're not allowing that.
Okay.
We're dealing with far too many issues of simply cutting the guttering to install an awning or a cover and not dealing with the drainage situations that result. It is possible to attach the awning or a cover below the guttering line, so that's what we're recommending. We're trying to minimize any damage, potential rain damage from that. So did that answer your question?
It did. Didn't answer it the way I was hoping. I would hope that we'd be a little more open to working with the member, and if we could come up with a solution that doesn't negatively impact the drainage, but also allows for the thing to be put, awning or cover to be put on, that we would do so, versus a clear-cut alterations to existing roof structure and drainage gutter systems are prohibited. That's a very clear statement, and I tend to like to think that we might be a little more open. Ira, you had some comment?
Well, just on what you had brought up, Mark. Let's say I bought a home. Gutters were already on there. They were an addition by the previous owner. They wore out. I decided not to replace them, but just to remove them. And then a year later, I decided to put up, or I removed them and simultaneously wanted to put, instead of repairing them, put up some sort of a system that falls within this. So wouldn't that be all right to do? Rather than continuing to maintain an alteration that I no longer desired or felt I needed?
Fair question. Let me give you my response, but first let me respond to your statement, President Laws. The enclosure standard deals pretty specifically with altering roof eaves, guttering systems. This standard is simply a much simpler structure, one, and we felt that these structures in both cases can be put up without impeding the direct drainage system. An enclosure is a totally different animal, and we specifically address those issues. To answer your question, Ira, if there is no guttering system in place and a awning or a covering wants to be installed, then you're abiding by the standard because you're not impeding the existing draining system.
Thank you.
And if somebody had a, say, retractable awning with cloth covering, does this standard cover that?
Yes, they're allowed.
Okay, where would I, sorry, I'm just, he talks about color options for aluminum or certain colors for aluminum, structural components must be aluminum, color options for vinyl materials. So that's why I was asking, just you talk about color options for aluminum, vinyl, but not necessarily the awning itself, I guess. So maybe we can clarify that a little bit.
I can clarify that by telling you the overall intent of the standard, or any standard for that matter, is to give the member enough of a guideline so that they can enjoy the benefit of what they want to do. The intent here, color-wise or material-wise, is we want to maintain the integrity architecturally of the building itself. So within that guidelines, the member is free to choose in the beige range if they do want to do stripes. What we're trying to prevent is, pink, green, blue awnings that would detract from the overall architectural integrity of our buildings. But on one hand, on the other hand, we're trying to give them enough leeway where they can make selections within that guidelines.
Okay.
Trying not to be too specific, but specific enough.
Okay, and so I would just ask you to look at 3.4 again, and just, again, it talks about color options for aluminum and color options for vinyl, not color options for cloth. So that's all.
We can certainly review that and clarify that.
That's all, I think. Yeah. And then I wasn't really sure why 4.0 was a separate thing, because covers, 3.8, for instance, you mentioned that, removal of an awning or cover becomes necessary. You talked about that just moments ago, that it's a member's responsibility, but then you have something about covers as its own special section. You don't have anything for awnings as its own special section, so I just was a bit confused by that structure of this standard, but I understand what you're trying to get to. Moon?
So this awning is permissible by the HOA, but do they need permission from city?
If Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know, and I don't want to state anything that I'm uncertain about. It's not, well, let me just say that. I would need to clarify that, unless, Jim, you happen to know.
I don't think under the city code, if it's not structural, but if it is structural, where you're going to put up posts to support the outer edge, then that would probably be, the city would require a permit for that.
A covering, yes, thank you. A covering, yes. Awning, I am just not sure of, because an awning is just attached to the...
So what you're saying is enclosed is for sure, but they need the city permission, but awning maybe not. Is that what you answer?
That's what I'm saying, but I also would need to clarify that.
So he'll find out for us. We'll know by the next meeting if it comes to that. Any other questions? Right, Michaela, any questions from any members? Okay. So now we're being asked to vote as to whether or not to move this forward for 28-member review and comment. We've suggested perhaps a couple of tweaks to this that staff may do between now and then. But do we want to pursue it forward and get members' comments and vote on it again next month? That's what we're being asked to do. Okay. We've moved already, so now it's time to vote. All in favor, raise your hand. I'm happy to move it forward. Okay, we got all of us. Yeah. But thanks, Moon, appreciate it. Okay, so that passed to put it on 20-day member review and comment period, and we'll move to agenda item 12B to entertain a motion to approve updates to our temporary storage containers policy. These updates were recommended by the Resident Policy and Compliance Committee, and today we will be voting as to whether or not to submit this updated policy forward for 28-day member review and comment as well. I'm going to ask for a motion, and then we'll have staff update us as need be. And can I get a motion? Chris moves. I'm going to look this way first, next, and then Ira seconds. Thank you both. Now we can discuss it. Good day, officer. You have any opening comments about it, or are you just there to answer questions if we have them?
President Laws, board members, I'm Dan Laurie. I'm Administrative Security Supervisor. I was just going to cover that we discussed, we presented on March 27th, the revised temporary containers policy to the Resident Policy and Compliance Committee. The committee and staff discussed the matter and suggested additional improvements, pardon me, by clarifying the language, and the committee directed staff to update the temporary containers policy. And that's all I have.
Okay, great. Anybody have any questions for Officer Lurie? All right, I do. So number 7, first page of the new policy, I think it's towards the bottom of the first page, or maybe at the top of the second page, I don't know. It states, temporary containers may be in place for a maximum of 7 days or until full, whichever occurs first. I'm specifically asking about pods. And then it added, any additional days needed requires approval, and at least 24 hours prior to the expiration date. My question is there truly a maximum number of days that a pod can be in place? When I think of a pod, I think of a pod being something that comes in, you fill it up, and then it goes back out and gets stored for a while until you need it again, and then it comes back. But I have seen some pods, and there's actually one in my neighborhood that has a little sign on it, and it says how long it's supposed to be there, and it says indefinite. So what can we expect as members of Third?
Well, this is the discretion of the board. We would look at each incident case-by-case basis to, I can't provide you an exact number. That would be at the board's discretion.
Okay.
But it'd be a case-by-case basis.
Okay, great, thank you. So right now, in your mind, there's no specific number of days. If somebody said they needed it for X period of days and you felt it was out of the way, and you as a security team would probably approve that, it sounds like. Is that a fair assessment?
It's a fair assessment.
But just because you haven't gotten more specific, thanks.
Yes,
All
sir.
right. Okay, great. Moon and then Reza. Go ahead, Moon.
Okay. You know, lately a lot of new buyers doing small renovation, but sometimes they do major renovation, which may take 3, 4, 5, 6 months. So you have limited to 7 days. Then let's say they take 7 months. Then how many times they have to do? 30 times they have to renew that. So as Mark pointed out, it is eyesore. But for the resident who trying to renovate, and they needed that job finished. So if you keep on bugging them, you renew every 7 days, and then there's a possibility it may be denied. What if it's denied? They want to stop the renovate? So I think, it is eyesore, but for the building renovation is a benefit for the mutual. So it is, in my mind, it is to be until that job well done. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Moon. Reza?
Yeah, there are a couple of circumstances. I understand if somebody moving in and out and bringing the pot, that's one issue. That can be limited time because you don't move for months. You just bring it in, fill it up, go, or you bring your pot in and then unload it. But there have been circumstances in my neighborhood also, next to me, that people had water intrusion and they put storage in the driveway. And I think that was more than probably 3 weeks, 4 weeks. And in that case, since the HOA is working on it, I don't know if the member have to go and every week renew that because HOA is taking care of it and they should be auto renewal till the work is done. So we don't have to bother the members. They already been bothered by the water intrusion and the other problems. So there are two different circumstances. I think we can put limit on one. The other one should be more liberal, depends on the circumstances.
Okay. Well, with the way it's worded, we're essentially delegating the responsibility for that decision to the security team. It sounds like you're okay with that. Okay. All right. So, yes, Moon again.
So when they apply for the pod, maybe there's a certain section, you may have how many days do you expect. So if I'm going to do 6 months renovation or HOA going to do something about 2-3 months, they should write that down. If that is past that, then they may have to renew that. Second, if there's any problem with the placement of that pod, then security come in and ask them resolve that problem. But if we ask you that 6-7 months project and you're asking every week you have to renew it, that's too much.
Okay. Got it. Okay. Great. Thanks. Andy?
Yeah, as Reza said, there are pods and there are pods. I personally used the pod when I moved, and the understanding was for a week before the move, you're loading up the thing, then they come and grab it, and then when you get here, it's probably in a warehouse nearby, and they come and they drop it off, and you got a couple days to get it out. So that's one situation, and if you don't move that pod, you're going to pay for it. You're going to pay rent on it, and they want that pod because it's part of their business. Others mentioned here that people are getting pods because they're having alterations done. Yeah, it's okay for a couple days, but I mean, at some point it becomes unsightly, and then you got to wonder, is somebody working the system? Really. We all have to put up with this, but like you said, Moon, there's a place for it to a point, and I think the subtleties of this maybe are not fully understood here. But at some point, I think we have to give our security people some latitude in interpreting this to a point. Again, if it becomes a nuisance, then you need to write the policy more specific. It's pretty broad right now, but in fact, pods are different. So I just wanted to mention that we're relying on the security people to understand those nuances and differences and do what's right for the village. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, Jim?
Yeah, I have a problem with number 8, where you're limiting the size, and you're saying dumpsters may be limited to 3-yard size. I have a problem with that because if you limit the size of the dumpster, you could impair the time frame of if somebody's gutting a whole unit, they're going to have to bring in a whole bunch of 3-yard size dumpsters. And I think we should not have a specification on the limitations of the size, because a low boy is much bigger than that, and that's what you need to come in and tear everything apart. So we should not limit our members to less than what our own staff uses for the same kind of circumstances. So I just say dumpsters size, they're only going to come at a maximum size of probably 40 feet. And again, a low boy is much different than a regular dumpster. So I just have a problem with you limiting the size.
I'm guessing that was done, I'm just kind of trying to think through that, because we did talk about it, since 3-yard was there and then crossed off and then is back. 40 feet, depending upon where in the village it is, could be very burdensome for all of the neighbors, or many of the neighbors, versus the small size. I think that's why we left it to May. That again, we're leaving it up to security to help manage what needs to get done, as Reza and Andy were talking about, versus the needs of the neighbors and the nuisances that it might cause. If it's a tight area, we might have to require smaller and more.
But the reality is, if you have the larger dumpster and you're doing a full demo down to the 2x4s, generally that demo happens in about 3 or 4 days.
Yep.
And so you can get it in and out. If you limit the size, you're going to extend that time period, because you're going to have to bring one in, take one out, bring one in, take
I think
one
that's
out.
what the word may is for, is to give them the discretion to.
But again, it's just may be limited,
Okay.
but not put an actual size.
Okay, all right. Okay, that might be okay, all right?
May be limited due to
Yes.
surrounding areas and circumstances.
Okay. I like
Not
that.
necessarily.
I like that. Hey, David.
Quick question. Do we have any actual statistics on how long pods actually sit on the street when people bring them in? Are they sitting out there for longer than 7 days people are doing? Or are they in and out in less than 7 days?
I don't have that information. I can certainly try and get it.
That'd be great, thank you.
I know what I've seen is in some areas. So I live in Gate 11. 11's very open, individual houses, 2-car garages, big driveways. So I see them in driveways a lot there, and they're not impacting anybody. From a driving perspective, maybe the person across the street who has to look out their bedroom window might see it a little more often than they'd like, but that's, so I see them for long periods of time as I'm walking around there. I tend to walk around the neighborhood quite a bit in other gates and don't see them as much. So I think, again, security is taking all of this kind of thing into consideration, the amount of space, the amount of impact kind of thing. SK, looks like you want to say
Yes,
something.
I had some instance at the gate 14, which is very limited parking space available. And one time was, I'm exaggerating a little bit, bigger than 10-foot container they parked, and it's extruded out to the driveway, or not driveway, but the kind of driveway, and it was impaired traffic in and out of the parking area. And I think that's the reason why I brought this up quite a few months ago about this issue. So I don't think it's for the gate 11 should be all right, but gate 14 case is a very limited space, so please consider that. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Okay. Any member comments on this topic? Michaela? Okay. So it's time for us to now vote. We've had some good discussion. I think we've suggested a couple changes in the resident policy and compliance. We'll work with Officer Lurie on those when they meet next. But today we're voting as to whether or not to put this forward for 28-day member review and comment and start getting some members' comments as well on this. So all in favor of doing so, please raise your hand. All right. Okay. There's 8 of us saying all against, say no. Raise your hand, sorry. Okay. So Moon prefers not. Okay. Great. Thanks, board, for that. And we'll move on to agenda item.
Mr. President, just to make sure, to me, are we voting as it is next time, or are we going to revise the Jim brought up the space or the size, and then I brought up the duration of a resident, or duration of placement? Is it going to be revised the next time, or?
Yes, but I'm not sure as much as your request.
My point was 7 days. I had a problem with it, and then
Right.
Jim had a problem with this size.
Right, so I understand Jim's. Yours was 7 days. You seem to think that 7 days, every 7 days, they had to go and re-up, if you will. That's not the case. Security can make the decision, hey, a month is okay, and then at the end of that month, as I believe is in the process, as in the document, they would go back out and reassess, and if the people needed it longer and that was okay, they would allow it to go longer, maybe another month, whatever, that kind of thing. So there's
I just want to make it myself clear, so that language will be changed for next voting period.
I'm expecting to change some language between now and the next time we vote, yes.
Thank you.
Okay. And if it's not changed to your satisfaction next time we vote, you can vote no again. Thank you, officer, appreciate it. Thank you very much. Yeah. All right, agenda item 12C is for the board to entertain a motion to approve updates to our internal dispute resolution or IDR policy. These updates were also recommended by the Resident Policy and Compliance Committee, and who worked with the Third's legal counsel to clarify the process. And today we'll be voting as to whether or not to submit this updated process forward for 28-day member review and comment. Can I get a motion to place the updated policy on 20-day member review and comment? David moves and Moon seconds. Thanks. Any questions, comments? It's just more of the legal team looking at our existing one and suggesting some changes. Any member comments? Kayla? Okay, David, yes?
I have one comment. I noticed that on the other policy revisions coming before the board, thank you. The other policy revisions coming before the board this morning, we had markup copy.
Yeah.
And we didn't have a markup copy on this one. It's just a request because it sure makes it a lot easier to try to understand what we're changing.
And that normally would be what would do,
Yeah.
but that wasn't quite the way we got it this time around. So, okay. But thanks. Okay. Any other questions, comments? Okay. And again, no member comments, so time to vote whether to put this updated policy forward for 28-day member review and comment. All in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, so that's all of us. 9 yeses, 0 noes, 0 abstentions. Thanks. Moving on to agenda item 12D, as in dog, for the board to update or approve updated committee assignments. So there was one in our package, and so I'm actually going to highlight some changes to that. So as mentioned at the opening remarks, we have a new director who was voted into the board on last Thursday, which was after the package was put together. So have some new committee appointments. So let me just kind of walk them through for everybody. Would like Director David Wieneman now to be on the Finance Committee. And Reza, you were just kind of put on there when you joined as the last prior person. David has finance experience, so I'm asking Reza you to become an alternate, if that works. Wei Ming is one of the VMS board directors who's resigning effective the end of this month, so she won't be attending any more finance meetings, so that's why I'm have her crossed off. Adding David Vieneman to the ACSC, Architectural Control and Standards Committee. Ralph was on that before, and we just never replaced him. Same with the Landscape Committee, asking David to be on that committee as well. Asking David to be a 5th member of the Water Conservation Committee. David lives in a garden villa, so I think it's appropriate that he be on the Garden Villa Recreation Room Committee. So people call the Garden Villa Recreation Room, call it a subcommittee, it's a committee. So it's not sub to anything anymore, so it's now a committee. So Moon, you had a lot of other committees you're on, so I've moved you off of the Rec Room Committee and replaced you with David, adding David as an executive committee member since he's new on the board. So those are the changes to the 3rd mutual. On the GRF committee appointments, what was in your package was that I was moving off of the Community Activities Committee, but what I didn't highlight was that SK Park is going to take my place on that. Again, since David has finance background, I'm going to move him on to the Finance Committee, pull Brad off, and have Moon be an alternate going forward. And then add David as an alternate to some committees that didn't have alternates. Those are the changes. So can I get a motion to approve those changes? Jim moves, SK seconds. SK, you have
I do have some questions.
Are you moving or seconding, or do you have questions?
Seconding.
Okay, all right. Thanks for seconding. Now you can ask your question.
Okay. So
Go ahead, now you can ask your question. Go ahead.
Question, yeah. Since Director Moon is going to be in the Garden Villa apartment as well, so is it possible that Dr. Yun can stay as a Garden Villa committee as well? Or
Sure, it's something news to me. So Moon, are you moving into a Garden Villa building? Okay.
I will, I request that I be taken off the board.
Okay. Yeah, okay. Great, good, excellent.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, good, thank you. I had no idea.
Okay.
So Moon buys and sells all the time. I can't keep track of where he's living.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, good. Are you okay with that, Moon? Okay. Here, I was trying to reduce your committees a little bit. All right. Okay, any other suggested changes? Okay, any member comments? I assume not. Okay, all in favor of these changes, please raise your hand. Okay, all good. All right, thank you, board, for that. All right, moving on to agenda item 12E. For the board to have an open discussion regarding our investment policy and plan. And I don't see anybody here from staff to help walk us through that. So I don't know if there's a plan. So at the Finance Committee, this came up, our investment policy and plan. We have some CDs or something that were coming due. My understanding is that the committee wasn't sure what to do with that money, that perhaps our investment policy was not clear as to what to do. And so can you kind of enlighten us as to why we're chatting about this?
Sure I can. To cut to the chase on this, the real question is go short or go long. And we know that the Fed is entertaining dropping the interest rates. Right now we're getting really good rates historically on our investments. It's big money. The Fed, now this is an election year and it's just a different animal. The Fed in the past has been very accommodating to the current administration in the election years by tending to make money more available, and that's what lowering interest rates does. However, the federal government, the last couple of years, has spent a lot of money, and just like anything else, the more something, the less its value intrinsically, and we have inflation, and we have higher interest rates because of that, because lenders want to be compensated for the decrease in value because there's more of something, and that's what's happened with interest rates with money. So we have an amount of money that matured, and our finance department is holding it, really wanting to know if we want to go long on it. The normal policy would be to roll it over at the current rate, and we're doing that quarterly. But at some point, if you thought rates were going to drop, you might just go long and lock in a higher rate and then ultimately come out with more interest income for the association. It's risky, though. Anybody that has tried to time the market will tell you that. And that's what we're doing here. Right now, the indication is that the Fed, if anything, will raise rates once pretty soon or drop rates, I'm sorry, by 25 basis points. But that's at the end of May. And so what we're suggesting is we need to make a decision on whether to roll that money over, and I think it's about $7 million. We need to roll that over at the current investment rate, which is like 4.5%, or do we want to go longer with it, appreciating that in another year, that money will come back to roll over again under our current policy. That's what we're talking about. And I'm glad to see that David Veneman is on our board because he has experience in this. And Dave, if you can tell us what the Fed's going to do, I'd appreciate that.
So just to make sure I understand, the current policy is that we would roll it over for 1 year, correct?
No, quarter. No.
Well, I mean, but the current amount.
We laddered our investments quarterly.
I understand, but the amount, the $7 million, based upon our current policy, is to just roll over for 1 year.
Per year, yeah.
And you're asking, should we maybe roll it over for 3 years or 5 years?
Yeah,
and get a 5% interest for 5 years versus a.
Yeah, if the rates
unknown
drop, there's a consideration. There's also a thing called a yield curve. Generally speaking, the longer out you go, there's more risk and you get a better return. In other words, 1 year money is cheaper than 3 year money and 5 year money and 10 year money. But in the past, the yield curve has been inverted. When the yield curve, when short-term money
you're
gets
losing
more
me,
than
man.
long-term money, you get a recession.
I'm not sure if I'm alone, but.
You don't want to
yield
hear this,
curves,
okay. But what I'm saying is, right now, the finance people in VMS are holding $7 million roughly, awaiting our direction whether to roll it over at the current market rate for a year or to go long with it more than 1 year. That's what it's about.
Okay. Jim?
There's 3 phases to our investments, and one of them is risk, and we want to have low or no risk. And so if we do go forward trying to anticipate, then we're going at a higher risk level, and that's contrary to what is set up in our CC&Rs and our investment portfolio.
Yeah, but we're dealing with highly liquid money, and it's, believe me, it's safe. It's safe money. We have rate risk. That's what we're talking about.
And so,
Okay.
Jim, just so that I understand, are you suggesting we keep it the way, roll it over for a year, or are you just making a
I'm
comment?
suggesting, because we've discussed this at length for over 2 years, that we continue with our ladder system and just roll it over as we've been doing.
Okay, got it.
Okay.
Ira?
I agree with Jim, and basically the reason being, if you try to anticipate getting a little extra money now, you may very well just lose it when the interest rates change on the way up. And so we're looking for a secure investment. You're not going to have any risk. I realize if we went for 2 years or 3 years, there wouldn't be any more risk, except, as you put it, the rate risk. And that's what the laddering is all about, to mitigate as it goes down, as it goes up. Because if we do it for 1 year, we catch it on the way up. But if you do it for 3, if it goes up, you can't catch it. So no one can tell you when the rates are going to go down, when the rates are going to go up. It's guesswork. And if you do it, as we had talked about originally, every 3 months you just roll it over. Yes, you do see some decline, but on the other end, when the rates go back up, you get it back up quicker. So it all balances out in the end.
Yeah, I'm going to go to David. I think he's got his hands up here. He's telling me a piece. So, yeah, it helps me if you kind of wave a little bit broader. There you go.
Yeah. Maybe I can clarify a little bit. The question that I think the Finance Committee is actually looking at right now is not going off the ladder, because the ladder is the key, one of the two keys to our investment strategy. Safe investments to minimize credit risk, and keeping the length of those investments pretty short to mitigate interest rate risk. And I agree with Jim and Ira, the latter is absolutely key, and the last thing in the world we want to do is try to anticipate where the Fed's going next. I actually once did some consulting for the Fed, and I can state authoritatively that they're going to do one of three things. They're going to raise rates, they're going to lower rates, they're going to leave rates the same. And we don't have a clue what they are going to do. I have talked to these guys, and I don't even understand what they're saying. The question that Finance has actually brought up to the committee and that we're considering is not a tactical move to try to guess or go long, because our strategy is make no bets. And as fiduciaries, that's what we have to do. What the Finance Department is asking us is, if we want to increase what's known as the duration of our portfolio, okay? Right now, it's pretty short. It's a little over, the duration is a little over a year. United has a fairly similar investment posture to ours, except they have increased the duration of their portfolio. Now, that's not something that you do tactically rather. That's not something you do to try to beat the Fed. That's just something you try to do strategically. In other words, the duration is a policy that should be set every 5 years or so, and it's not a good idea to change it more often than that, and it's certainly not a good idea to change it in response to whatever happens to be happening in the market today. United is a little bit longer than we are, so Finance brought up, does Third Mutual want to consider extending the duration of its investment portfolio a bit? In order to do that and fulfill our fiduciary responsibilities, we'd need to do a little bit of due diligence. I think what we need to do is get a contingency analysis done on reserves and get an idea of what claims against our reserves are likely to be. Finance, I'm sure, can do that reserve analysis for us. And then I think we can start considering, okay, do we want to lengthen the duration of the investment portfolio at all, or do we want to keep it where it is? But the due diligence is critical, because we'll need to show we weren't making bets, this was a strategic decision, and we were maintaining our ladder. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and in addition to that, by having it every 3 months come up, we have the liquidity of being able to use those funds if we need to. And that was all taken in consideration as part of the formula we worked out to come to the conclusion that we're at right now.
See, I agree with you, everyone here. Very well said. I wish I had said it, but you're clearly an expert in it, Dave, and we welcome you aboard and look for more counsel in the future. And that's the thing, liquidity without being a penalty. In other words, we have to draw down our reserve from time to time. And really, if we got caught in a bind where it wasn't a great time to draw a reserve, down, and our investments kind of put us in a corner. We're going to have to take a hit because it's out of line with the current rates. By keeping this flexible policy, we don't eliminate all that, but we mitigate it, and that's what stewardship is about, mitigating this kind of risk. So, personally, if you ask me, I think we just ought to continue on what we've been doing and roll the money over in our current policy. That's what I would agree. That's what I would suggest.
Yeah, as David said, we have a fiduciary duty not to take too much risk. Shouldn't lose money. But we also have a fiduciary duty to make return the maximum or possible, as much as possible. We have both sides of fiduciary duty, which is contradicting each other. We can just keep the money on my hand. We're taking to least or no risk at all. But nobody does that because we do need some kind of return. But that return needed to be the maximum is possible, not taking excessive risk. So we are trying to, and David said that we have so many consultants coming in. So a simple idea is this. We had an interest rate for a long time, almost 1% for a long time. Somehow the economic situation, financial situation, the election, and COVID, all that. Right now, the Fed interest rate is around 5%. Nobody can see what's going to go up and down. Nobody can be 100% sure to say either way. But we can see for sure it is better than 1%. 5% is better than 1%. So if we take that 5% in the longer term, then it's better when it goes down, let's say 3%, we'll be laughing. We'll be happy with the 2% gap, which we are taking. But if it goes up to 7%, we are hitting our head and we lost that 2%. But I would like to see that at this time, I like to see that 5% as long as possible, either way, but it's better than 1%. Okay, everybody see that the financial report, we are not the guy in Wall Street. Even the guy in Wall Street, they all mumbo jumbles. They don't know exactly. But it's definitely better than 1%. So I like to see that little longer term. Then I also have a question to Andy. To have a tranche every 3 months, or whenever Marcus said when we can invest in 1 year period right now, or are we investing every 3 months different?
My understanding is every 3 months we invest a fourth of our money for a year.
Okay, so my question is every 3 months we have a
quarter
tranche
the
coming
portfolio
in.
rolls.
But
Yeah.
roll over, we can do 1 year or 3 months.
No, we're doing.
Well, we have a policy that, no, we can't. We can't go beyond the year, the current policy. Yeah.
Beyond the year. We
Yeah,
cannot, right? So we can go up to 1 year. Is that current policy?
Yeah.
So my question is, I think this we have to discuss at this point, can it go beyond the 1 year? Is that the question is, right?
Yeah, you see that there's two things involved here, and one of them is the yield curve. The second thing is the type of instrument. Typically, some of the longer, if you get into a fund, look out. We're investing in government securities, really safe. But, people chase yield, and they get instruments that maybe there's concentration risk, a bunch of things. So we want to avoid that, too. Davis Sterling tells us if it's a contest between risk and return, we err on the side of risk. We don't increase risk chasing return to a point. So our policy right now in prudency is to be opportunistic, but still to reflect that it's everybody's money we're talking about here, and we don't want to unduly put it out there chasing yield. Chasing yield in a negative sense is bad, and we don't do that. So we're trying to be consistent, and that's why the policy was developed. We're getting 4.5% roughly now, which is great historically. How long that game is going to last, I don't know. But at some point, the Fed has said they want to drop the rates to 2%. That's a long-term number. And, 25 basis points, 50 basis points is one thing. A couple hundred basis points is another. And we're not there. So really talking about minor stuff, and you don't want to take a lot of risk for minor stuff. So I agree. Keep what we're doing.
Okay. All right. So I'm trying to get us past this.
I just want to make a motion that we vote on keeping our current plan of as they come due every 3 months, we roll them over for a year and just maintain that until we have some discussion in the future. That's all.
Okay. I second that. Okay.
Okay.
I think David hit the nail on the head. I think we have to do our due diligence for the risk of what hit against our reserve before we go 3 months, 1 year, or 2 years, because without that information, it's all, classic book things, and it really doesn't work unless we know what are the risks that we're dealing with and how much liquidity we need to have in order to do the investment right. So I suggest that we do that kind of due diligence, and that bring up to what is the next step. But meanwhile, we keep it going the way it is till we figure that part out.
Okay. SK?
Yeah, since we have yield curve inverted, that means the short term is a higher interest rate.
Mm-hmm.
The rate is higher with the short term. So I like to see maintain as current policy for the low.
Normal yield curve, the shorter you are, the lower the rate. Inverted yield curve, short-term rates are pretty good. Historically, it's been a precursor to a recession. So
yes,
you want
I
a
understand
normal
that.
yield curve.
As long as we have inverted curve, we should stay as is.
No, I have
As long as
asked,
we have a normal yield
Okay.
curve.
at the last finance meeting, I have asked Steve, Steve's here now, so ask to give us information on how the United and GRF are doing. I haven't got that information. Can you tell us?
Okay. All right. I'm not sure it matters. I'm not sure it won't change my vote. So I'm not sure if it'll change other people's vote. But
No, we need information.
So just for clarification, are you speaking to the policy? How are you different? Or are you asking in terms of how they're actually invested?
How they are doing, the policy-wise, you said, I asked you last time, we need more information from United and the GRF, how they are doing, what their policy changed or doing it.
Correct, thank you.
What's the difference from us?
Correct. So GRF is similar to you where it's not defined in terms of what the term of your investments should be. So the direction from the board, obviously, for third was to roll it over every 3 months when it comes due, put it to a year. So United is different where their policy specifically states that they can put 20%, 25% in 5-year terms, 25% in 4-year terms, and then the rest has to be between 0 to 3-year term. So that is within their policy. And currently that is how they're invested.
How about GRF?
GRF is all within 1 year term.
Same as us?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
SK?
I have a question to Steve. Steve, United and GRF was in financial problem when they invested into the bond market. Am I correct?
So all three corporations had similar investment policies and similar
But we
investments.
came out pretty earlier than the other two, right?
timed it well to where you came out of the bond index funds before they went south, correct?
Right. So we were lucky on that respect. But I think the problem was, yeah, lucky or smart, I don't care.
Sure.
But the problem was they invested in the bond market index fund.
Correct.
So as long as we're not doing that, and the curve is inverted, we should be all right for 1 year short-term period.
So I won't speak to future performance of the investments. So I would only encourage you to stick with your investment policy, but it's open to decide what that policy is going to be.
Right. Okay. I understand. Thank you.
So there's a motion on the table to keep things the way they are every 3 months, invest for a year. All in favor of that, to let the finance team go forward with that, please let it know, all right? 8 of us, all against? All right, okay. Thank you for that. Okay, all right, thank you. So it was 8 for keeping the same policy that we have today, and 1 against. Agenda item 12F is for the board to have an open discussion regarding what experiences, qualifications, traits, skills, whatever the third board directors might like to see in our VMS board directors. This was suggested that this be a topic today. Thanks, Steve. Does anybody have any comments or questions about it? Any thoughts? I'll start. I'm not sure if Ira, you were going for saying, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, I think VMS should try to work as if it were a for-profit corporation. So I think people that have worked in a for-profit company and kind of understood the way it works versus, say, a government that might work differently and have different expectations of itself. I think that experience with a for-profit company might be a good thing for somebody to have. Not necessarily a requirement, but might be something that we'd be looking for. Okay, I'm throwing that out. Any other ideas or anybody disagree with that? Or Andy, you got some thoughts?
No, I second that. I think, again, using to cut to the chase, VMS is even though it's a not-for-profit in a sense, even not-for-profit should operate like a for-profit company when it comes to the financial stuff, because they increase their resources. It's a survival thing. It's something they should do. So business experience is very important, and the higher the level, the better, because you need to think also strategically. If you're set up a certain way, I mean, you could have a conflict internally with the way you're set up, what you want to be. So there has to be a little bit of strategic thinking to, in effect, to use a cliche, to right that ship and getting it in the right direction. So I can't say enough that, and it's hard to get, but when you get it, try to use it. The second thing is that I think the potential candidate, the more understanding they have of where the mutuals are coming from, the better they can perform their role as VMS. Now, we know that each of us in our corporate roles has a fiduciary duty to that corporation. And there are times, and I can't think of many, when they're at conflict. Davis Sterling, among others, would say that we have to be loyal to the corporation we're in. And fine. But I think you need to have an ability to work around a conflict, to find some middle ground. Because in the end, VMS is really here. VMS is serving us, but we're here for the residents. And we need, a board member has to think ultimately what benefits the residents, not just the corporations. Thank you.
Okay. So what I've heard from you in summarizing them is maybe middle to senior level management in a for-profit company would be helpful. Someone who understands that their role is to represent the third board. You mentioned Davis Sterling, so VMS is not part of Davis Sterling. They aren't an HOA. They're a corporate government state company, so they aren't required to follow Davis Sterling. So they do have some slightly different things. So I'm just paraphrasing that. So Reza?
Thank you. I work for two of the largest not-for-profit corporations in the country. Our motto was that we are not non-profit, but we are not for loss either. Okay. Any corporation is not said to be losing money. That's given, even if you're not profit. So it is a little bit different between non-profit and not-for-profit corporation also, the understanding. Those companies, we have the savviest business people, at the CEO level and CEO level. That means you're running a business. A business, even it says not-for-profit, when you turn a profit, the only difference is your profit turn into either philanthropic or into the organization. That's you're allowed to make as much money as you want as long as you reinvest in your organization or charity organization. So we cannot hide in the VMS behind that we are not for profit, so we cannot do any kind of things. We need to run this as a business, and the profit will be reinvested in our community. That's how it should be looked at. Okay. So to me, a VMS board member should have a extensive management, a business understanding of how to run an organization that want to run profit and reinvest in the organization.
Okay, great, thanks. Moon and then Ira? Ira, Moon, point.
Ira, you go ahead first.
Okay.
He raised it.
Sure, I missed it.
So far, I believe we're all kind of circling the wagons around the same idea. Looking for someone or some mentality of successful business background and understanding of the processes used within, let's say, VMS, where they benefit third or where they don't, the quality of goods and services used or purchased, how they affect our immediate financial position as well as our long-term financial position, because quality of service and quality of product, even though they may be, let's say, a high quality, may be more expensive up front, they're cheaper on the maintenance end on the long term. So they have to understand a balance of how high you can go before it doesn't pay for you any longer. And I think that, this is getting more into detail, but I think that's the kind of thing, the direction that a management company needs to be able to provide us. That's all.
Thanks, Moon.
Yeah, VMS is a corporation, non-profit corporation. Don't forget that, non-profit. That doesn't mean they do not want any profit. They want to make as much profit, but when they report it, they become non-profit. How they do it? Whatever profit make it, they can use internally, raise a salary, buy another car, whatever, they used up their money. Let's say I made $5 million, they can use up, they can make a zero, then it become non-profit, they didn't make any profit. So if we got illusion because they have name of a non-profit, they are not going to make any profit, whatever they are serving us. There are several problems with the VMS, what I see. I do not know the previous management company. They must have some problem, so we changed it. But their service is not up to standard. Many people, many residents I hear complain. Okay, maybe 80% their service is great, but 20% are loudspeaker or whatever we hear, okay? But still, we want to be better service in general, okay? Second, their mindset because we cannot touch you guys. They cannot touch me. So who are you? So that kind of mindset is a very unfortunate interrelationship between board member, resident, and VMS employees. Okay, thirdly, lastly, as the Raja said, the money issue. They want to make money. They want to squeeze money from us. But I've been raising my voice so many times. Significant portion of our residents have very limited resource. We keep on every year 5-6% raise is acceptable. Our director has that mindset, BMS that mindset, and then even some of people said if they cannot pay that 6-7%, they shouldn't be here. They should sell the house or rent it or move out. Is that what you want? Or we have to be more attentive to those demand or those people who need it. So we have to think about. So VMS will run like a business like hell. They'll make a profit, but somehow CPA accounting manner, they will just erase it. So we have to guard ourselves, our resident. If we don't do that, we'll be run over. Many different ways. Better service, better relationship. We are losing our money out of pocket. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Okay.
I've used this cliche before, the perfect is the enemy to good. Here we are saying what we like, but, who's going to be, you want a rainmaker, to use a term in the industry? No, I think what you want, we need to improve the bench strength, to use a baseball analogy, of VMS board, the bench strength. And beyond that, VMS per se, the board has a responsibility to structure itself so that it doesn't rely on individuals. For many years, I worked for a Japanese company, and even in this market, we had these rainmakers, and that's get the right rainmaker. The Japanese always said the system should produce the results. People come and go. Easy said, hard to do, but it is a laudable thing. The system should produce results. So I would hope that VMS board would have something to build on collective reasoning. In other words, something like an operating committee, staffed with VMS board members, but also supplemented with advisors, however you get them. And to boil it all down, I wouldn't look for this one person to be a miracle worker, but rather someone who could work with other people so that the sum of the parts is, the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. You get what I'm saying? Synergy, a person who can be a team player yet bring ideas. That's what we ought to be looking for. Not a rainmaker, but someone who could work within a framework of cooperation. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, good. One of my notes was similar to what you said, someone who thinks creatively and is not afraid to say what they think, even if their thoughts are different than others. Because I found that sometimes my goofy ideas spark ideas from other people, even though, but are okay if they're outvoted. Someone with good negotiation skills, able to convince others, work well with others, all good stuff. SK?
Yes, since the subject of this item is qualification of the VMS board directors representing our third board, I want to make very short comment. First, I'd like to see the director who assigned to this VMS board has a good quality to improve efficiency of the VMS BMS working. And the second, I'd like to see someone who does not have lip service attitude working for the VMS. Thank you.
Thanks. All right. Any other comments? Okay, good. That was all I wanted to kind of get out of this. I'll kind of pack some stuff together. Thanks.
Not all you have to do, just find the right candidate.
Yes, the reality is, we can talk till we're blue in the face of what we want for qualifications, but we're lucky if we get a warm body.
Right.
But I just,
That's the problem.
But it may help some people think, be more likely to apply if they have a better idea of what we're looking for. So that's the idea. All right. Thanks again for that discussion. We'll move on to agenda item 12, which is where the members of this board will share our monthly committee status updates. And we're going to start with the report of the Finance Committee. Andy. And staff.
Do we have the slides up?
Yeah, she'll bring them up. Thanks.
Okay, the first slide is just a very high-level description, and as you can see, our revenue exceeded expense in a global sense by $1.5 million. Now, this is what we've seen in prior years, and also you got to remember, first couple months, you can't rely on the first couple months. So we're looking for items that maybe will be a longer-term problem. But so for the first couple months, bear with us. And we just want to make sure that this ship is going in the right direction. All right, can we go on to slide 2? All right, the operating fund. Now remember, there's two different funds. There's a reserve fund and operating fund. The reserve fund is more for replacement, whereas the operating fund is the day-to-day stuff. And the operating fund shows a deficit of only $5,000 through the reporting period. The chart shows how much of the revenue went to operations, with $4.6 million coming in from assessments and $265,000 from non-assessment. And this compares roughly to the same amount of expenses, excluding depreciation, which is a non-cash outlay. Okay, can we go to slide 3? All right, the next statement, the next slide breaks things out compared to budget. And as you can see, our non-assessment revenue is slightly below plan. And part of that is due to a delay in collecting damage restoration catch-up. Because of the holidays, we couldn't have as many hearings on this matter as we wanted to, and the process requires us to have hearings to collect this money. So we are going to catch up on that in the future. So it's just a timing issue at this point, I hope. As far as total expense goes, we're under budget, and that's, again, due to timing, and we'll get into that later. Can we go on to slide 4? All right, this bar chart shows some major components of the variances. First one's outside services. It's favorable by $333,000, and again, it's primarily due to timing and landscape and M&C. And we're talking about programs such as prior to paint landscaping, water lines, that's the relining in the 3-story buildings, tree maintenance, and roof replacements. Staff anticipates a contract for prior to paint landscaping being awarded by April, and expenses beginning to come in by May. Roof replacement work is also anticipated to begin mid-year. You have to remember, it's been pretty rainy the first 3 months of the year, and we can't get the work people out there to do the work that they need to do, so it's timing at this point. Employee comp and related is favorable by $200,000, and that's mainly due to open positions in landscape and M&C departments that we budgeted for to be filled that in fact haven't been filled. Impacted areas include grounds maintenance, irrigation, paint, electrical, and manor alterations. Recruitment is in process to fill open positions. Recognizing that we're really having a problem getting people, grounds maintenance contracted out shrub bed maintenance to outside vendors for the pruning weeding cycle as they continue to fill open positions. I know our residents have reasonable expectations about how things should look, but the reality is you can't get things done if you don't have the people, and we're having trouble getting the people. So it's not an excuse. It's just an explanation of what's going on, and we hope we can turn that around. Investment income is favorable by $132,000. Now, in this year's budget, the investments were budgeted to earn 2.5% for the whole year. In fact, they're earning about 4.5%. So that 2% or 200 basis points on $30 million invested is $600,000 annually. And, quarterly, roughly you'd expect $150,000 built-in favorable variance. Now, you might argue, why didn't we budget more for interest income? And the reason is we're being conservative because we know interest rates can go south, and that'll affect our returns. So we took a midpoint. On the other hand, it's nice to have a little cushion in there to offset bad things that happen. Let's move on to utilities and telephone. Unfavorable by $54,000. And that's related primarily to electricity, and in this case, not demand, but there was a misposting, an accounting entry, and that's going to be made, this is through February, the entry was made in March to take care of it. So that was not a real issue. But trash and water ended the period unfavorable due to higher rates than anticipated at the time of budget preparation, and sewer remained within budget. Finally, we're talking about fees and charges to residents, $452,000 unfavorable. Now, this is due to the timing of billing requests for backlog damage restoration cases. As I mentioned earlier, we have a process. People are entitled to due process, and by and large, most people agree with our assessment of the situation that they're responsible. But they won't pay until the process has been gone through, and we've got a delay in getting that process completed. So by and large, it's resulted in just a timing delay of getting those payments. Something we're going to watch so that it turns around in the future months. Okay, let's move on to slide 5. Now here we're talking about a breakdown of fees, and these are non-assessment revenues earned to date by category, and we compare them to the current year's budget and the prior year's actual. And the reason for that is prior year is an important thing to know because you can do comparison, year-over-year comparisons when you have that detail. So not only are we looking at comparison to budget, we're looking at last year. And I think as some of our directors have requested, they'd like to know percentage increase, and this chart gives you that. So our largest revenue generating categories were investment income, resident maintenance fees, and sales and leasing fees. Non-assessment revenues totaled $506K through reporting period, and that's, as you can see, the year-to-date budget was $852, so we're short $346, which is mainly, it's really in resident maintenance fee, which includes the catch-up on the assessments. So it's largely a timing issue at that point. At this point, but we'll be watching it closely so that it turns around. Okay, let's go on to the next slide. Here we're dealing with expenses by category, and again, we show them compared to current year's year-to-date budget and prior year's year-to-date actuals. In our largest expense categories, as always, are employee comp and related, insurance, and outside services. As you can see, outside services were favorable to budget, and that's because of timing. Raining and whatever, the workers can't get to do the job, so we redeploy them to the best we can, and we save money doing that. But what it also means is things that were supposed to get done weren't done. So again, we're hoping to catch up on that. We'll be watching that very carefully. All right, let's go on to slide 7. Non-operating fund balances, and in this particular case, this deals with what people typically call the reserve, but in effect, we have several additional accounts which function as backstops to things that happen. And the non-operating fund balances, as you can see, total $34.4 million at the end of the period. They started off at $32.9 million, so we're building those balances. But just remember, reserves tend to be lumpy, and when we have to pay for a big capital expenditure, it could flip the way we've been seeing. Here we have expenditures half of what contributions are, but in fact, it can go the other way. So don't always count on the reserve going up, but so far it has been going up, and that's good. All right, let's go on to the next slide. Here we're doing a historical charting, and as you can see, everything is trending up in total, but in fact, we're building replacement funds, and the discretionary funds we're not building so quickly, but we've got quite a bit of them in case things happen for contingencies. The good news, really good news, is that we continue to build our reserve balances, which is a source of strength for the association. All right, let's go on to slide 9. Now, here we have a little different thing. You know, interest rates are good for earners or for savers. Interest rates are not good for borrowers, higher interest rates. And what we have here is a combination of the Fannie Mae, in part, pulling back on mortgages and higher interest rates in case somebody wants to finance it. But even if somebody pays cash, there's an opportunity cost. Instead of buying, they could have just rented and invested that money at a high rate. So both of those things have acted together to reduce the amount of resale activity compared to historical experience. And the bad part about that is that we do earn fees from resales, so if the volume of resales is down, the fees on those are down, and that's what the statements show. We think resales will return to a normal level eventually, but not right away, so more to come. All right, I guess that completes my discussion of the slides.
Great. Thank you, Andy. Appreciate it. And next we have the ACSC. Jim?
Now, wait a second, Mark.
Mark,
There's
more?
Not done, not done.
Oh, my mistake.
Okay. The committee met on April 2nd. The next meeting is May 13th at 1:30 p.m. in the boardroom and as a virtual meeting. I'm sorry, I read the wrong line. The next meeting is June 4th at 1:30 p.m. in the boardroom. Please join us.
Okay. Thanks. Thanks for having that. All right, Jim, ACSC.
Okay, the Architectural Control and Standards Committee. We continue to update standards, as we saw so many taken care of in the board meeting today. In addition, we are improving our resale inspection process for first inspections and record keeping of manor alterations so that buyers are better informed as to their responsibility for all previous alterations they inherited from previous owners. To add to that, we had some discussions here today about statute of limitations, and in reality, we have no statute of limitations because we may not know that unauthorized alterations have happened until they fail and we break into a wall and discover that it's not the HOA's responsibility because that alteration was done inappropriately. In addition, Director Moon commented about things paying penalties and having them go forward. Well, what in essence happens is they will only approve that and pay the penalty because that alteration would have been allowed under a mutual consent had they actually applied for it originally. So they're just paying a penalty because they didn't do it as original work, but it was done appropriately. So just to try and make some of those clarifications, our next committee meeting will be on May 13th, 2024, in the boardroom and as a virtual meeting.
Great. Thank you, Jim. Brad's not here, so we won't be talking about the MNC committee meeting. So we'll hear about the landscape committee. Ira?
Okay, so we have a lot of things going on, but nothing really quite finished yet. We're getting more information every month to be talked about at our meetings with regards to tree work status, the project log, updates on slope renovation, slope maintenance. A lot of these things are being put online now, so everybody can look at when trees in their neighborhood are going to be pruned, when the slopes are going to be maintained, so there won't be as many questions in the past as when am I going to get service? So we're hoping to solve some of those issues. Due to the recent AB 1572 from the state of California, basically saying that we have to, by 1/1/2029, not irrigate any turf with potable water, which includes all of Gate 14, all of Gate 11. That's approximately 32, 33 acres of turf. We're hoping to start a program, I'm hoping to start a program before the end of the year to start to remove 6 acres of turf every year, so we don't get burdened with doing it all at once and not being able to and getting penalties from the state. An inspector has been hired, and I hope to get a list of exactly what he's going to inspect next time. They're trying to move a paper list to an app, and hopefully that'll be finished by the next meeting, and we'll be able to look at that at our next committee meeting. There's the update on the prior to paint oversight that should be hopefully talked about today in our closed closed meeting later on today, and hopefully that'll get started shortly. We're also making a list of, or landscaping has been asked to make a list of undesirable trees, so we can get ahead on that and start to save some money and pull out trees that are problematic around walkways, driveways, and the like, so we can replace them with trees with roots that go down rather than out and don't break up our community, causing us extra cost. There is a slope identification system. It's basically a mapping system for the entire community that's being looked at. We're trying to make sure that every area gets mapped so no area gets missed with regards to maintenance, which unfortunately some areas have been missed in the past. And one other thing, mostly everything, we are trying to refine for Gate 11 front yard designs so that we can comply again with AB 1572, and this is an ongoing situation, and hope to, in the next couple of months, have these finished and out there so people can see what's going on and what they will need to do moving into the future so the association can comply with AB 1572. So with that, I will say our next meeting will be Thursday, May 2nd, 9:30 here in the boardroom.
Okay, great, thanks. Jules is not here, but I will say that the next quarterly Water Conservation Committee is next Thursday, April 25th at 2 p.m. here in the boardroom. And finally, from a third mutual committee perspective, we have the third Resident Policy and Compliance Committee. This committee last met on Tuesday, March 27th. During that meeting, the committee discussed the financial qualifications for purchasing a manor within Third Mutual and reviewed and approved changes to Third's temporary storage container policy and Third's internal dispute resolution policy that the board voted on earlier today. This committee will next meet next Tuesday, April 23rd at 9:30 a.m. here in the boardroom. We plan to continue our discussion regarding the financial qualifications for purchasing a manor within Third, and also discuss the potential implications of reducing Third's leasing cap from 30% down to 25%, changing staff's process to not require proof of income for co-occupants, and discuss Third's traffic rules and regulations. And that's all we have for Third Mutual committees. We'll now move on to agenda item 13, where we'll share our monthly GRF committee status update, starting with the GRF Community Access Committee, or CAC. Andy?
Yes, that committee just met on April 11th, and financially speaking, the recreational activities are favorable to budget, bottom line. And that's even after there was a shortfall on golf revenues because of the rain. People can't play golf in the rain. They hope to make that up. And the way the budget is set, it's pretty much spread evenly, but we know golf has a season. At that meeting, one event did occur, and that is that the billiards operation, there's 2 billiards clubs operating out of 2 different locations. They met with GRF, and they've been consolidated into one location to allow GRF to have more rentable space. So here's a situation where 2 clubs took less for the benefit of the village. And I just want to, right now, here and now, applaud the billiards club, both of them, for sacrificing a bit for the good of the village. I'd like to see more of it. This selfishness that some clubs elicit is not what this village is about. But other than that, the recreation area, the recreation activities are continuing. I'm a little concerned that, yeah, we're favorable to budget, but you know, that budget is, there's a certain amount of services that come out of that budget. So if you're favorable to budget, did that mean we got less services? So what I'm saying is saving money at the expense of services that we expect and need is not the way to go. But right now, recreation is very favorable to budget, and we intend to continue on that committee to solicit resident input to maintain and improve the recreational activities and events that we have in the village. Thank you. Regarding that, our next meeting is going to be May 9th at 1:30 p.m. in the boardroom and as a virtual meeting.
Okay, thanks. And while I have you, Andy, what's the latest from the GRF Space Planning Ad Hoc Committee?
Yes.
And then I'll get to Moon's question.
Okay. The Space Planning Ad Hoc Committee just met again on April 10th, and we have a big meeting scheduled for May 1st at the PAC. So we expect a lot of people, and the reason for that is it's a very important meeting for a lot of people, because anytime you're talking about space planning, you're talking about reallocation of resources within the village. Unfortunately, depending on the way you look at it, there are some winners and there are some losers. But in the end, the village should benefit positively. So a number of proposals have been put forward to better utilize the space within the village, and also to bring back people who are in leased space right now back into village facilities. So there are a number of proposals that have been advocated. I like one of them in particular really a lot. But we'll talk about that at the meeting. And these proposals are, and they're just proposals, will be a direction to the GRF board how to improve space utilization in the village. Again, May 1st at the PAC, 1:30 p.m., Hope to see you all.
Correction, it's not at the PAC, it's Clubhouse 5.
Pardon?
It says Clubhouse 5,
Not the PAC?
not the PAC.
It used to be, okay. Correction. It's going to be at the Clubhouse 5, which can hold about, the big room can
500
hold about
people.
500 people. The PAC holds 800, so it might be, it could be crowded. Thank you. Thank you, Resident.
Moon may have had a question or comment for you, Andy?
Yeah, the CAC, one is a golf, how we run the golf course, make money on it. They call it the green committee or green committee or green group or whatever they say, okay?
Yeah.
They are basically managing golf course, but they are not under any committee. They are not under any jurisdiction. They are kind of free running group. So that needed to be oversighted by committee, by the board members or board groups. So I have some problem with that. So the negative is about 750 every year. Every year we pumping in 700, more than 700 grand, and we don't have any oversight on them. Second one issue is Clubhouse. We have a lot of space problem right now, especially right now because Clubhouse 1 is closed. So Clubhouse 6 has been closed for a long time, not operating most of the time. But now, because of Clubhouse 1, Clubhouse 6 is opened. So I did go in and see that a couple of times. That is one of the best clubhouse I ever seen.
Yeah.
Very nice atmosphere. But we are running all the space. Why we are not running Clubhouse 6 when it's fully opened? And we're still talking about we want to build more buildings, more things. And the existing, I'm pretty sure we spent several tens of millions of dollars to build it, and we are wasting sitting there. That is, to me, what a waste of our resource. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving on, we get an update from SK regarding the village traffic hearings.
Yes, traffic hearing was held March 20th, 9 o'clock in the morning in the boardroom. Total of 7 violations were heard. And here's committee voted as follows. 1, hit and run violation, which was $200 fine. And second, no parking zone violation, guilty and fine. And 3 failures to stop, guilty and fine. And 1 speed violation was over 11 to 15 miles and guilty and fine. And the last one is very interesting. 1 speed violation, speed over 11, 15 miles per hour. And it was dismissed due to lack of village notification. What happened was this program was implemented for only 2-month trial base, which intended for safety of a traffic officer. The trial was that the officer issued a notice of violation without stopping the vehicle. Without stopping vehicle means without identify the driver. And since an instance the reason of that is since an instance of traffic officer was killed in Mission Viejo, since an instance our VMS staff set this trial without a well notification to all village members. This created a lot of confusion and a lot more workload for security officer and supervisors. So lack of notification, we dismissed this violation. That was very interesting. And next the traffic hearing is scheduled April 17th, which is tomorrow, which is I cannot attend, but I believe Dave, you will attend to that. 9 o'clock in this morning. You got the package?
Yes, I did.
Good, thank you.
Thanks. And while I have you, SK, what's the latest from the GRF Information Technology Advisory Committee, or ITAC?
The GRF ITAC meeting was held on March 29th, 1:30, as a closed meeting. This advisory committee overseeing development and implementation of Microsoft-based Dynamic 365 software program, which is ERP, for entire Laguna Wood Village organization. Last month, I reported about the delay of Go Live program, but this advisory committee staff reported that the ERP project was made good progress last month, which is March, aligning with the planned milestone and objectives. The team was demonstrated a significant commitment and the business process knowledge in advancing the project strategies. Ensuring that all critical components are developed and integrated according to functional design and specification. This is what our staff suggested for the reporting. But my final report is ERP plans are, first, April 26th, which is a couple days after, user acceptance test, UAT, to be completed. And after that, June 7th, user acceptance test, second, signed off. And the third, July 15th, mock live will be implemented. And then fourth, August 1st, between August 4th and 14th, it will be go live. I hope that is the true. And next ITAC meeting schedule is April 26th, 1:30 p.m. by web closed meeting. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, SK. What's the latest from the GRF Media and Communications Committee, Jim?
Okay, I have a couple slides. Did those get put together? If I can have the connection pathways first. Okay, on your screen you see a thing called connection pathways. This is very, very informative. It's something everybody should have a copy of and put the magnet on your refrigerator so that you can know who to contact about all different kinds of things, and also where you can get all the information about what's going on in the village. This will be published, and we're leaving it here on the screen if for the 10 people that might be watching television, you could actually take a photo of this with your smartphone to have it available. But in the future, it'll be published in some form in the Village Breeze. It'll be hard copy in the racks. It's probably going to be in a What's Up in the Village. Also, some form of this will also be in the Globe, and hopefully I can talk Mark into putting in one of his Wednesday emails just so everybody has availability of this. And that's one of the major things that I think really helps people to stay informed about what's going on in the village. And now if we can go to the other slide. Okay, if you see on this slide, if you go to the homepage, Laguna Woods Village, and it starts with where new adventures begin, and just below that it says Community Tour Experience. And Siobhan talked about this a little bit today, but if you click on that, what you get is a 20-minute video basically showing what the docent tours that were done live used to provide, but at a much, much less cost to the village in order to do this. And I encourage old residents, new residents, all residents to view this just to refresh yourselves on what is available here and where everything is. Along with that, the Media and Communications Committee has been put in a split from the broadband. It's in a different department now. We're only meeting once a quarter, And along with that, we've updated the committee charter because our responsibilities are for communication and not for the actual hardware of broadband and that anymore. So you may get less reports, but there'll be a lot of information through all of our different publications. And with that, our next meeting will not be until July 15th, 2024 at 1:30 p.m.
Great, thank you. And finally, do you have any updates from the last GRF Disaster Preparedness Task Force?
Yes, Disaster Task Force Committee meeting was held March 26th, and here at the boardroom at 9:30. In that meeting, committee discussed many agenda items and discussed as follows. First, review the shelter-in-place training at Clubhouse 3, which is PAC, on March 15, and it was very successful training, which was organized by Ms. Grace Stansel. Second item, discuss pet evacuation plan by Ms. Sandy Benson. And third, Director Eric Nunes discussed coordination plan with the city for emergency operation consulting firm. Fourth, Officer Dan Laurie stated that antenna installing at Clubhouse 3 may be completed in June. And the next DPTF meeting is scheduled on May 28, 2024. Thank you.
Thanks, SK. And the following GRF committees have not met since the last third board meeting of March 19th, so there are no updates for these. The GRF Finance Committee last met on February 14th, and the date and time of its next meeting is to be determined. The GRF Media and Communications Committee last met on February 21st and is scheduled to next meet tomorrow, April 24th at 1:30 p.m. here in the boardroom. The GRF Broadband Ad Hoc Committee last met on February 14th and is scheduled to next meet on April 19th, and that is a closed committee. The GRF Mobility Vehicles Committee last met on February 7th and is scheduled to next meet on Wednesday, May 1st at 1:30 p.m. here in the boardroom. And the last one is the GRF Landscape Committee met on February 14th and is scheduled to next meet on Wednesday, May 8th at 1:30 p.m. here in the boardroom. And that concludes our committee reports. We're now at agenda item 14, which is for the board to note any items they'd like to be discussed at a future board meeting. So far on our list, we have the three items that today we put on 28-day member review and comment, which are approving a revision to standard 38 for patio and balcony covers and awnings, approving the revisions to thirds temporary storage containers policy, and approving the revision to thirds internal dispute resolution policy. Are there any other items that anybody would like to add to be considered for discussion at a future monthly open board meeting? Seeing none, we'll consider that closed. We're now to agenda item 15, director's comments. Do any directors have any last minute comments they'd like to share with the board and our members? David, any final comments?
Thank you all for a warm welcome. Much appreciated.
Thanks. Moon has nothing? Ira? Okay. SK? Jim?
None.
None. Chris? Okay. Andy? Reza?
Okay, no.
Okay. All right. Staff? Saying no, all right, excellent. So it's now 12:13. With that, we will consider our open meeting business completed. At this time, the monthly board will recess for 17 minutes. And then the executive committee will reconvene to executive session. Thanks as always to those of you who have participated, and thanks to everyone for listening.